Sometimes the players who fall in love with your city, the hardest, are the same ones who end up having the most complicated relationships with staying long-term. And when a defensive star finally breaks out after waiting patiently for his opportunity, only to face uncertainty about whether that opportunity will continue, the entire franchise has to confront some uncomfortable truths about roster, management, and long-term vision. Welcome back to Bears News Fan Report, where I bring you daily updates, exclusive analysis, and the unfiltered truth about our Chicago Bears that you won't get from anyone else. I'm here every single day breaking down roster decisions, coaching strategies, and the moves that will determine whether this organization finally returns to championship contention or continues spinning its wheels in mediocrity. Make sure you're subscribed right now and hit that notification bell because what I'm about to reveal involves one of our most impressive defensive performers this season and a situation that could force the Bears into a decision that nobody in our fan base wants to contemplate. Let me set the stage by talking about something that every Bears fan who watched that dominant 31-3 victory over the Browns witnessed firsthand. We saw a linebacker who played with relentless energy, who made game-changing plays, who recorded his first career interception, and who absolutely deserved every bit of recognition he received afterward. This wasn't just another solid performance from a role player. This was a statement game from someone who's been waiting for his chance to prove he belongs in this league as a starter and not just as depth. The NFC recognized it by naming him Defensive Player of the Week. The coaching staff recognized it by awarding him a game ball, and Bears Nation recognized it by celebrating one of the most complete linebacker performances we've seen all season. But here's what I need you to understand about the NFL, and this is where things get complicated in ways that most fans don't immediately recognize. Outstanding individual performances don't always translate to long-term security or guaranteed roles, especially when you're talking about a player who's in his fourth year in the league, who came to Chicago after being drafted elsewhere, who's only made 4 starts for the Bears this season despite being with the organization, and who's about to hit a crucial point in his career where decisions need to be made about contracts, roles, and organizational commitment. These are the situations where team executives have to balance rewarding performance with maintaining flexibility, where coaches have to decide if a breakthrough game represents a new baseline or just an exceptional moment, and where players have to evaluate whether they're truly valued or just temporarily useful. DeMarco Jackson is the linebacker I'm talking about, and the situation surrounding his future with the Chicago Bears is far more uncertain than the celebration after that Cleveland game would suggest. Now, before anyone thinks I'm being negative or pessimistic, let me be absolutely clear about my perspective here. Jackson has earned every opportunity that comes his way through his preparation, his attitude, and his performance when his number gets called. The way he's embraced Chicago, the way he talks about the connection between the fan base and the team, the way he approaches game day with meticulous preparation that includes everything from his strict routine to switching from worship music to G Herbo the moment he steps into Soldier Field. All of this demonstrates a player who genuinely wants to be part of what we're building. This isn't about Jackson's desire to be here or his capability to contribute at a high level. This is about organizational dynamics, roster economics, and the harsh realities of how NFL teams make decisions about players who aren't firmly established as starters. Consider the context of Jackson's journey to this point. He came into the NFL as a 5th-round pick by the Saints, went through the infamous Dennis Allen training camp initiation with 40 up-downs before practice in Louisiana Heat, and developed within that New Orleans defensive system before eventually landing in Chicago. He's in his 4th year now, which means he's approaching the end of his rookie contract and will soon be eligible for a new deal that reflects his market value. The Bears have to decide whether that market value aligns with how they see him fitting into their defensive future, whether they're willing to pay him as a starter when he's only started 4 games for them, and whether investing in him makes sense compared to other options available through the draft or free agency. The performance against Cleveland was objectively spectacular, but it also creates a complication that the Bears' decision-makers have to navigate carefully. When a player has a breakout game that earns national recognition, other teams immediately take notice. Defensive coordinators across the league watched Jackson's tape from that game, saw his athleticism, his instincts, his ability to make plays in coverage, and immediately started evaluating whether he could fill needs on their own rosters. This is how the NFL works. One defensive player of the week performance can transform a player from an afterthought to a legitimate target for teams looking to upgrade their linebacker corps. The Bears now face a situation where Jackson's value on the open market might exceed what they're willing to pay given his limited starting experience with the organization. There's also the Dennis Allen connection that adds another layer of complexity to this entire situation. Jackson has spoken repeatedly and with genuine emotion about his relationship with Allen, who's currently the defensive coordinator here in Chicago, but who obviously has aspirations of being a head coach again in this league. Allen was Jackson's first NFL coach, the one who put him through that brutal initiation, the one who helped develop him as a professional, and the one whose approval clearly means a tremendous amount to Jackson personally. The way Jackson described coming back into the locker room after the New Orleans game earlier this season and seeing the joy on Allen's face after getting that victory, that's not just player-coach respect, that's a deep personal connection that influences decision-making beyond just X's and O's. Here's the scenario that Bears fans need to start preparing themselves for. If Dennis Allen gets offered a head coaching position with another organization this offseason, which is entirely possible given his track record and the success of Chicago's defense this season, there's a very real possibility that Jackson follows him to that new destination. This wouldn't be about Jackson not appreciating Chicago or not wanting to be part of what we're building. It would be about a player choosing to continue working with a coach who he trusts completely, who knows how to use him effectively, and who's been instrumental in his development as a professional. The NFL is full of examples where players follow their coaches to new situations, especially when those relationships are as strong as what clearly exists between Jackson and Allen. Beyond the coaching connection, there's the fundamental question of role and opportunity that Jackson has to be evaluating internally. He's now in his fourth NFL season and has only made 4 starts for the Bears, despite being with the organization and clearly having the talent to be an every-down linebacker. That limited starting experience isn't necessarily a reflection on Jackson's abilities, but rather on the depth chart, the defensive scheme, and how the coaching staff has chosen to rotate players at the linebacker position. But from Jackson's perspective, he has to be asking himself whether Chicago is the place where he's going to get the consistent starting opportunity that allows him to build on performances like the one against Cleveland and establish himself as a legitimate NFL starter rather than a situational player or high-quality backup. The Bears' linebacker situation heading into next season is going to require some difficult evaluations and potentially tough decisions. The organization needs to determine which players are core pieces of the defensive identity moving forward and which ones are expendable if better options become available. Jackson's case is particularly challenging because his small sample size of starting games makes it harder to project whether he can maintain that Defensive Player of the Week level consistently or whether that Cleveland performance was an outlier. Teams get burned all the time by overpaying players based on limited sample sizes, and the Bears front office has to be cognizant of not making that mistake, even if it means potentially losing a player who could develop into a star elsewhere. There's also the financial reality that every NFL team faces regarding the salary cap and how to allocate resources across the 53-man roster. The Bears have significant investments in other areas of the defense and will have decisions to make about extensions and new contracts for multiple players this offseason. Jackson's market value after that Cleveland performance might price him out of what Chicago is willing or able to pay, given all the other roster needs and financial commitments. Sometimes great organizations have to let good players walk because the economics don't align with the overall team-building strategy, and that might be the situation the Bears find themselves in with Jackson if other teams come calling with lucrative offers. What makes this situation even more interesting is Jackson's background and the type of person he is, based on everything we've learned about him. Growing up on a family farm in South Carolina, dealing with adversity like tearing his ACL senior year and then winning a state championship in discus anyway, developing that meticulous game day routine that reflects his discipline and preparation. All of this paints a picture of someone who's going to make a thoughtful, strategic decision about his future rather than just chasing the biggest paycheck. Jackson will evaluate where he has the best opportunity to start consistently, where he can work with coaches he trusts, where he can maximize his career trajectory, and where the organizational culture aligns with his values. Chicago checks some of those boxes, but it might not check all of them depending on how the Bears approach his situation. I want to hear directly from you, Bears Nation, because this is the type of roster decision that reflects on the organization's values and long-term vision. Should the Bears make a strong effort to retain DeMarco Jackson, even if it means paying him based on potential rather than proven starting experience? Do you believe that Cleveland performance represents who he can be consistently, or was it an exceptional game in an otherwise limited body of work? How concerned are you about losing him to another team where he might flourish as a full-time starter? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I read every single one, and your perspectives matter as we evaluate how the front office handles this situation. Looking at everything comprehensively, I remain optimistic that whatever happens will work out best for both Jackson and the Bears. If Jackson stays in Chicago and earns a starting role that allows him to build on that Defensive Player of the Week performance, we potentially have a cornerstone piece of our defense for years to come. If organizational realities lead to him signing elsewhere, it means the Bears have made a calculated decision that allows them to allocate resources in ways that better serve the overall roster construction. Either way, Jackson has proven he belongs in this league as more than just a backup, and I'm grateful for what he's contributed to this defense, even if his time in Chicago ends up being shorter than we'd prefer. Subscribe to Bears News Fan Report right now and activate every notification so you don't miss any updates on Jackson's situation or any other critical Bears news as we head toward the offseason. Hit that like button if this analysis helped you understand the complexities of this roster decision. Share this with every Bears fan who needs to be aware of what might happen with one of our defensive standouts, and keep those comments coming with your reactions. This is where championship organizations separate themselves from the rest, and I'll be here every day making sure you understand exactly what's happening. Bear down.